I want to ask my guest actually this, and without further ado, why don't we just get right into it? And I'd like to welcome Luke from Market Mania. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Thank you so much for bringing me on. It's great to be here.
It was a bit of a spastic beginning of this stream, getting into this. You walked in right as I was like in the heated moment, venting about my frustrations of what's happening. And this is ridiculous. And I'm glad you're coming in at this part of the conversation because you obviously know a lot about economics, you know a lot about trade, you know a lot about all these things. And we have essentially a political wing of our government in Canada, and one that has nothing to do with the trade, with the the things that have to go on with other parts of Canada, especially because they don't even want to be part of Canada. They were talking about the Bloc Québécois, a particular group of politicians who are whiny babies, in my opinion, that want to have their way, but they don't want to bring the debt along with them or any of these other things. They just want to enjoy their cake. They want to eat, let them eat cake and have it too. Apparently, the old Marie Antoinette thing. But yeah, they just made a historic alliance with Justin Trudeau in saying the rest of Canada gets to pay this carbon tax on their farmers. So that what was being proposed was legislation to relieve farmers of this fuel surcharge, which we already do on diesel fuel. We do this on other things. Why not do this for them? Anyway, welcome to the show, and I'd love to hear your point of view on this one.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy, and it just shows how out of touch this government is. I mean, there's so many things that we can discuss that they're doing that just makes no sense. I mean, Freeland just came out with a fall economic statement, and buried in there, you'll actually find that she said she expects unemployment to go up, and they're still importing hundreds of thousands of people into the country. There's no jobs for these people, and even the government's acknowledging it. But here they come. Just come on over. You can live on the streets. I mean, it's just insane.
Well, that was something that I brought up just this past week, because like I know everybody's touching on all the things that are causing the housing boom, the housing bubble, probably one of the biggest housing bubbles in economic history, in the world history.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
I mean, apart from China's housing bubble, which a lot of people don't want to talk about either. But there's the elephant in the room. So yeah, there's pressures from all these different things like speculative buying and bidding up the prices, really low interest rates for way too long, causing people to force to get out of any sort of savings and get into the market of buying commodities, which they all flock to housing. But the elephant in the room is the 500,000 plus immigrants that we plan on bringing in every single year.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, I'm an immigrant myself, and to hear these numbers with what's going on with the economy just makes absolutely no sense. And when you talk about like the housing bubble and everything that's fed into that, I mean, I believe that there was multiple things that really caused that, but a lot of that could be blamed on immigration, because if you've got a high amount of demand for rental properties, then that lends itself for a lot of landlords to become landlords, or potential landlords to become landlords. And then you can just speculate on the prices. I mean, it makes no sense in anywhere in Canada to buy a rental property. I've tried to do the math on it in like every city, and it makes absolutely no sense unless you're speculating that the price is going to go up like hundreds of thousands of dollars every year.
Let's get into that, because I haven't done that math, and I'm glad you have. So return on investment. I remember this from back in, when I'm sure many people in the audience remember Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff was one of the economists who accurately predicted the 2008 crash. He said it's coming, it's right around the bend. Up until a week before, they were laughing at him, telling him like, get out of here, doomsday guy.
Dr. Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he accurately predicted it. And he was actually going to conventions where people were buying real estate property for rentals, and he was telling them, you're getting negative return on investment on these properties. And they're like, yeah, but you have no idea. The property's going to be worth tons in like 6 months. I'll be able to flip the property and I'll make a whole bunch of money. Like what is the return on investment, say in a town like Calgary, where you know there's already not enough housing. People want to buy the houses just so they can consume it. This is just consumption. We just want to get in the house and live in it. And they're paying exorbitant prices because it's all bid up. But like, to buy a rental property, what kind of profit would you even turn on it? How long would it be before you actually turned a profit on something like that?
A long time. And in this environment, you're going to be negative cash flow. So you're actually going to be losing money every month. So that is why it's part of the reason why we have a housing crisis, which is so bad right now, because in most cities across Canada, the interest rates going up has exacerbated this issue. So there was always a cash flow problem, and people were taking like negative cash flow properties on board in Toronto, Vancouver, all these different places. But what's happened now is interest rates have gone up so much, those payments have shot up so much that the gap is now so wide that it makes no sense, even if you're thinking the property is going to appreciate by, 10% per year, especially when you can buy like a government bond, or you can buy, I forget what they call those things, GIC from the bank, and you can get over 5% on that. So it makes no sense. And that's part of the reason why we have such no rental properties that are coming online right now. But part of the reasons is the prices have been driven up so high. And another reason that has fed into that is the high immigration, because that allows there to be a lot of demand for rental properties. So there's always demand for rental properties out there, even though the prices aren't even keeping up. Like, there's not even a positive return. So in Calgary, there isn't a positive return. I even looked in Edmonton because I knew the prices in Edmonton, they hadn't really gone up. They're still like, they've been flat now for like 15 years. And I thought maybe there's a possibility that you could turn a profit in Edmonton and do it. And you can't. You just can't. It's like impossible. Even if you're putting, you would have to be putting so much down. And then you have to ask the question, well, if you're putting like 30, 40% down on a house that's $500,000, why aren't you putting that in a GIC and getting like over 5%? Mm-hmm. So makes no sense.
Now, are government bonds even is that a safe place to be right now? I mean, we're at the most debt that we've ever been at. We're looking at, I mean, Chrystia Freeland will get on television and say, but we have a AAA rating. And because of the number of immigrants that we pile in every year, if you measure that against our GDP, it looks great on the books, right? And really, that's all it is. It's just the sheer number of people in the country that makes our GDP numbers look good. I mean, without that, it looks terrible. We're 2 consecutive quarters in negative growth. And they flub the numbers to say like, yeah, but if you look at it in the year over, we're like 0.01 positive. We're not in a recession. We're in a recession, like by all intents and purposes, by the clinical definition of what a recession is. and yet people are still investing in bonds. I mean, like, this is really ridiculous to me. I know it's not the 1% interest rates that they were giving, or not 0.1% interest rates they were given for so long, but with 5% interest rates on a promise to pay back a currency that is going to be worth what, like 13% less by the time you get that money back. What is the point?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't buy Canadian government bonds, that's for sure. I mean, I buy US treasuries, but that's really to do with the macro picture on that, because there's a lot of external demand for the US currency that's out there. So even though the US government is going bankrupt, and I wouldn't be interested in buying any of the long-term bonds there, I stay away from like Government of Canada and all of that stuff, because I think that there's so much risk that the currency does depreciate a lot, especially with the backdrop of what's happening. And you mentioned the GDP numbers. Well, if you strip out government spending as well, you are left with an economy that looks absolutely terrible, because every dollar that the government spends, so they're increasing their deficits, that means that they're increasing GDP. That's the way you have to think about it. Every extra dollar that they spend increases our GDP numbers. So if you strip out government and you strip out the immigration component, you know, we're in like a major recession, not like a mild recession, a major recession right now. We got interest rates high and debt levels like through the roof. I don't see this ends well.
No, absolutely not. It's funny how you mentioned that. I mean, the analogy would be to, you know, judge your personal finances and say, well, you know, we're not getting a lot of money coming in. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hire a landscaping crew. I'm going to have them come in. They're going to, you know, do a bunch of work around the yard. And then, you know, I'm going to add that to how much we've made this month. Like, wait a second, hold on. No, that's an expense. That costs money. Well, I got more people working in the neighborhood. I got all this stuff going on. No, it's an expense. It costs you money. It's criminal to add costs to the GDP. It should actually be reflected on like a negative on our GDP. It's a cost to the taxpayer. It doesn't matter what the government's doing. If it comes at a cost, it's not beneficial to society. If we're not making widgets, if we're not making products and services and selling them to people in the private sector, we're not making stuff. And what's next? What's next? Are we Soviet Russia?
Wow. Look at the censorship laws that we've got being passed right now. It's pretty Orwellian stuff, Clyde.
It's insane. It's insane when you actually like stop and have a look at what's going on and you compare you compare all this stuff. I mean, we got I want to ask you about this because this kind of segues into a bit of what I was just going on in my head, because I'm thinking about, you know, the end of Soviet times was not when the Berlin Wall came down. It was when the Berlin Wall went up. That was when socialism was a failure. And this is what they do. What they do is they'll trap you. As soon as they become a failure, they need mechanisms to keep the people in, because if not, they'll flee, and then there goes the rest of their thing. What we have coming down the pipe are CBDCs, and we have digital ID, and you can't have one without the other. Those two are the new digital Berlin Wall. This is what's going to keep people in. It's going to be the thing that, and you know, people who do bail out, they're going to have to bail out with nothing in their pockets, just as people did when they fled the Soviet Union. What are your thoughts on digital ID and CBDCs?
I think they're horrible. I think they're really Orwellian. And the problem is you're putting so much power in the central planner's hands, then it becomes really dangerous as well. But I think the main problem is that the way they're going to introduce this is they're going to introduce this and it's going to come. It's going to happen. It's almost a certainty now. It's just a case of seize the next crisis. It will happen. But with CBDCs in particular, I mean, they're trying to do exactly what failed in Soviet Russia, which was allocating resources. That's what they didn't do well. And that's what caused the collapse of Soviet Russia, essentially, and the USSR. And essentially, the CBDC allows them, the central planners, and they think that they can do this fantastically. And obviously, we know they won't, but it allows them to allocate the resources. So for instance, if they want to do stimulus programs, we know they've been big on stimulus programs that we've had over the past couple of years with everything that happened in the pandemic. So if you've got a CBDC, well, now they can say, okay, we're going to give you these dollars, Clyde, but they expire, or you can only spend them on this certain item in this certain sector. And they're going to try and allocate resources based on that and boost certain areas of the economy. Supposedly, it's not going to work, and it's going to have massive unintended consequences. And one of the unintended consequences of something like that is capital flight. People don't like that. People don't like being told what to do with their money. And you've seen that with the Soviet Union. You know, how many people were trying to get out of East Germany into West Germany? I mean, that's why they were literally shooting people who were trying to get out, because they didn't want that to happen. And they wanted to state and say, you can't leave. And that's why they put down that Iron Curtain. But the fact is, that's what we're going to face and have happen. And you have, the weird thing is, like, other parts of the world are doing the opposite of this. Like, they are like places that are authoritarian, like the UAE, for instance. I mean, that is literally a dictatorship, but look how welcoming they're being to entrepreneurs. Look how welcoming they're being to capital. Look how safe a society they are, which is just kind of crazy that we're now looking at different dictatorships and saying that actually looks kind of better than the situations that we now have, which is so Orwellian.
Explain that. So, like, for those that don't know what the CBDC stands for, this central bank digital currencies. Now, when you go to the United Arab Emirates, like, how are they more welcoming than like coming to Canada, for example?
Yeah, so for capital and for instances like that, they allow anybody to get a visa. If you're going to start up a business, if you're going to bring something to the table, you can go to the UAE. They've had tons of people. Business startups have absolutely exploded there. Lots of entrepreneurs have flocked there. Obviously, there's no tax. So there's a massive tax incentive from the start off. You know, the government is relatively small there, even though it's a dictatorship, and that's what people like as well. So, and now the problem is the West is doing the opposite, like I said. So as the West goes more and more towards central planning and authoritarian, all of a sudden you look at other places that are literal dictatorships and you think, wow, that's actually less worse than the situation we're in now. But the problem is it happens slowly. And people don't realize it, because when things happen slowly, you don't notice. Because the thing is, like, I go back to England, I visit every year, and every year I go back, I notice that things have got significantly worse. But people there, they don't notice that. They just think it's the same old. So things go down this slippery slope and they generally don't come back. And obviously we've seen things before, after the terrorist attacks in 2001 and everything happened there. You had the government come in trying to seize power after that with the Patriot Act, and that's been used in the United States. And they're even digging that up now to restrict free speech again. So, you know, these things, they're always using these crisis events that happen, things like what's going on in the Middle East right now, which, you know, people have different views on, but you've got what's happening in Ireland right now. And again, they're restricting free speech there. They're saying that you cannot say different things about certain groups. I'm not even going to mention it because I don't want the AI to shadow ban the video.
Right.
It's just crazy times.
Yeah, you can't say certain things about certain groups. And it's crazy to me how they just keep coming up with new schemes, absolutely new schemes to get people, to like entrap people in things. I have this new article that just popped out. I've been talking about this for months, and they're finally going through with it. And this is British Columbia, CBC News. BC files application for Canada's first unexplained wealth order, minister says. Now, for those that don't know
what the hell is that?
So an unexplained wealth order. I had to do my research on this. I spoke to lawyer Wes Musio, and he filled me in on all of what this means. What it is it's a racket, essentially, where the government can come up to you and say, hey, you got a lot of nice things. How'd you get those nice things? And then you have to explain to them how you got those nice things, or else they're going to seize those nice things. So if you can't explain your wealth, they flip due process on its head in Canada. Absolutely flip due process on its head. They first came out, they were starting it with, we're going after Russian oligarchs. And then that lost its popularity and things to talk about. And then we're going after money launderers. And then we're going after drug traffickers that we're going after. Just give us the rules, okay? Just give us the thing so we can shake down anybody we want. And who are they going to come after, really? I mean, it's just like the central bank digital currencies. Who is worried about this? Who are the people that are concerned? Well, people who speak out. People who are like you and I, who are talking about this going, either, get your money out of Canada, or people that are saying, fight against this government. We need to change the culture here. We need to get rid of these central planners that think that they can run our lives. And they go, oh, well, as soon as you got that central bank digital currency, we can earmark your money so it doesn't work for things like train tickets or plane tickets or particular types of food. Hey, you're a little tubby this month. Hey, I saw you put on a couple of pounds. No, we're gonna ration your food. I mean, like, what length does it go to? I mean, it sounds so ridiculous to say this stuff, but tell me something today that you read in the newspaper that 5 years ago wasn't absolutely absurd.
Well, yeah, carbon scores. I mean, they're literally debating this in some countries like Australia, bringing this in. But it's just going to be a score to start off with. It's not going to affect anything.
Oh yeah,
but
there's no reason for it. We're just going to roll out
this CBDC. Yeah.
It's just a feel-good thing.
There's no reason for it. Exactly. We're just going to roll out this CBDC as well. Separate thing entirely, not linked. But then, I don't know, there's some type of climate crisis event. And, now you need that carbon score and you want to take that flight. Well, actually, you can't take that flight, but we can take our private jets.
And the whole idea of money expiring is like, it's actually counterintuitive to the whole ecological thing. So like, I consider myself an environmentalist, and I'm not a climate alarmist, because that's a completely different camp. But I'm an environmentalist. I want a clean environment. I want to be able to go hiking, and I don't want trash everywhere. I want nice clean air. I want to have nice clean water from our creeks and our rivers and all that stuff. And the way we do that is with sensible regulation on industry and sensible regulation with garbage disposal and all these things, right? That's fine. That's fair. That's lucid and not crazy. So, but then, they go so far with this, and they go to like a completely other level. It's at what point does everybody push back and say, no? Like, no, we can't do this. At what point are we risking everything? We're risking our economy. We're risking. What I was getting to here was the point that CBDCs, if they expire, you're encouraging consumption now instead of savings. The whole idea of conservation, the conservation of the environment. I mean, you and I both know economics very clearly, and there's a lot of people out there that don't see what economics actually is in a nutshell. And I think that's a good way of putting it to people, is to say that, well, economics is really just a measure of what resources are available, how fast we're going to consume them, how fast we're going to allocate those to other things, and how much of it's going to stay in the ground and be equity for some owner for future consumption. But what we're doing is, with all of this stuff, we're doing the absolute opposite of ecology and conservation. We're encouraging consumption in the here and now, and forget about the future. Just get it, chew it up, swallow it, poop it out, and don't think about it.
Yeah, and I think when you do stuff like that, when you have money that expires, you actually encourage the opposite. So even though you're encouraging consumption, what you'll actually have as one of the unintended consequences is people want to actually save, because people are actually worried about their money expiring, funnily enough. So you get things like gold. And I don't even believe, like, the currency, the paper that we use, I don't even believe that's real money. Like, I only believe that gold and silver, they're the true real forms of money, and they've stood the test of time. These fiat currencies that have only been around like hundreds of years have really not stood the test of time. And there's there's fiat currencies that are coming and going constantly, and literally they're constantly going down in value as well. Our dollar is constantly going down in value. I mean, at a record pace right now
Well,
compared
that's
to
what
the past.
inflation
But
is. That's all inflation is.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And they want more inflation, and they always say 2%, and people say, yeah, 2%, but your wages aren't growing at 2%. Most people's wages aren't going up that quickly. They're not getting a rise of 8% after 4 years, but they think, 2% a year, that sounds reasonable. But yeah, reasonable in a reasonable economy. We have a massive financial bubble and a government that's out of control. And between the government and the financial bubble that we have, there's not much of an economy left compared to what we had like prior to 2008 and the lead up to that. So it's kind of crazy where we're at right now.
So what's the what is the valid is there a valid argument for against deflation? So in the turn of the 19th century, it was a deflationary environment in North America. I mean, the prices of everything was coming down, and I know that they'll say like, well, people won't invest in anything if the prices come down, or people will hold off and they won't consume because they'll do that. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, I want that price to come down, but I want that thing now. I mean, at the end of the day, they want the thing. I mean, people will forego thousands of dollars to have it in the here and now by borrowing and paying interest rates on the thing. So what's the real valid argument? Is there a valid argument for why deflation is a bad thing?
Well, I mean, when you think about it, like, so for instance, computers have come down in cost a lot since they were first introduced. I mean, I wasn't like even buying the first computers that were out, but I know they were way more expensive than they are right now. And we can probably all agree that the innovation of computers has gotten better and better and better over time. And part of that has probably been because prices have come down and it's become more accessible. So I think the argument of deflation, saying that, you know, companies won't invest, is kind of nonsense, because as prices come down, you're opening that market up to more and more people, in my opinion. So then you can get more and more. And if there's a return on investment, then investors are always going to invest. If you have a healthy economy and people can make a return, they're going to make a return. And it doesn't matter where interest rates are. That's another thing. Like, a lot of people say, oh, interest rates are really high right now, but historically they're actually quite normal, probably on the low side. But, you know, if you can make a 20% return, Clyde, suddenly 5% interest rates don't matter to you. If you're borrowing money, you're making 15%, you know, if it's over a couple of years or whatever, that's a fairly decent return, even with inflation factored in. So it's all based off the returns, I think, that you get in the economy. And the problem is we have so debt-loaded economies, and we've got, between, you know, mortgage debt and the government, we've just got so much debt. I mean, mortgage debt surpassed the entire GDP of this country this year, which just baffles me. I mean, people think government debt is bad in this country. Mortgage debt is much more than that. I think
It's
government
absurd.
debt is around 1.4 trillion. Yeah. And now mortgage debt's over 2.1 trillion, which is just ridiculous. So everybody's in so much debt right now, and that's the chokehold on our economy. And the only way we get out of this, unfortunately, isn't a debt jubilee. That's not going to be the way that we get out of this thing. It's through how every other crisis in the past, when we've had this happen, like during the 1930s, where essentially you need deflation to happen. That needs to happen, and you need people to deleverage. And that means people default on loans, and that brings on a lot of hard times.
Well, that's, I mean, that's a very nice way of saying everybody in the housing market needs to lose their shirt. Like, essentially, that's
Yeah.
that. I mean, at the end of the day, just like not sugarcoat it. Really, what it is that there was a giant malinvestment. When you muck with an economy, say you come in and you give some artificial sprinkling of whatever in the economy, you put a fishbowl in the river. You know what I mean? With the goldfish, it's gonna muck stuff up. And what happens is it creates these market signals that tells people to go in places that shouldn't be going. And essentially like it's not written in the stars that central banks should be setting the interest rates. Like that is just not how it works. Interest is a market function on how much savings is available in the market. So how much savings is out there becomes the price mechanism for how much you cost to borrow. How much, there's a lot of people that want to borrow, and if there's not enough savings, it's really high interest rates. And if there's too many people saving, then the interest rates will go down until you find equilibrium. It's a price and simple supply and demand curve. But when central authorities come in and they say, no, we're going to make the interest rates super low by adding liquidity to the market, because that's the only way they can do that. It creates a false sense of where people should go with their investment. So all these people have gone into the housing market, malinvested, bid the prices up, so it created a frenzy. So a lot of people are like, holy cow, I don't even need a job. All I need to do is buy a house and then sell it next year. And I make on average about 150 grand a year, like what is that? It's craziness is what it is. And all these realtors are telling people, no, this is normal. This is a normal economy, and getting people tied into more of this stuff. Now the market flips, interest rates go up because they have to, because it needs to correct for everything else going up in price, because of how crazy it's getting, and everybody needs to lose their shirt. And then who do you blame? Who do you blame in this? Do they ever blame the central bank that caused the problem in the first place? No. They blame the lenders, or they blame this or that, the banks. The banks a lot of times have their hands tied. Right now, did you know that Chrystia Freeland's new plan, they actually made it
the mortgage charter?
I don't know about the starter, but they have a new...
No, the charter.
Oh, the charter. Yeah. So they have a rule where they're just waiving the stress test. So they're renewing people's mortgages without even seeing if they're capable of paying them.
Well, and that's happened for a long time, Clyde, because I know a lot of people who work on the inside of banks, and they don't even check people's credit. And people might say that's a great thing, but if you're not checking people's credit when you're renewing a loan, that is just completely absurd. But this is where we've got to in these times, and people just think this is normal. If you go out and ask any person with a mortgage and say, like, are you getting a credit check on renewal? They'll go, no, I don't think I've got a credit check. I mean, most of us have like the, TransUnion reports or whatever. So if we have a credit check because of identity theft and stuff like that, we get a notification. So we're all aware of what's going on with our credit, hopefully. And basically, it just doesn't happen in the banks. They haven't been doing it. Prices have been running up, and it has just caused more and more moral hazard in the banking system. And then you've had the government, because the government has played a massive role in this for a long time with the CMHC, because, if you're allowing governments to insure loans, you've got both the insuring of loans, which the government does, and they've done it for even so if they sold an uninsured mortgage prior to 2016, if they sold an uninsured mortgage, the bank could just go to the CMHC and insure it, even though the person hadn't paid for it. The bank could pay for it, and they did. That's what they would do with all of their loans, because they were like, well, this is great. The government's just stopping us. We'll pay that fee happily, because it's a much lesser fee than if that person defaults, goes into foreclosure or whatever. And it just creates moral hazard in lending. And that's what we've had happen. And this has just allowed the system to just leverage upon leverage upon leverage upon leverage itself. I mean, a lot of people say about housing supply, and I hear the realtors talking about this nonstop, and it drives me absolutely nuts, because It's supply and demand. That is simple economics. It's not just a supply market, it's a supply and demand market. So where's the demand coming from? Oh, it's 80% speculation. Okay, well, I think we have some type of demand issue as well then. It's not just purely we're not building enough homes. And that's all the politicians across the board. You hear say that constantly. If we just build homes, we'll just build our way out of this problem. And it's like, no, there's far bigger problems in the system that you just cannot solve with building homes. And part of that problem is just the allowing of people to just lever up upon leverage up. And it's pushed out first-time home buyers. And the Canadian dream of owning a home has just gone off over the hills and into the sunset, essentially.
Dude, the Canadian dream of renting a home is gone.
Well, yeah, exactly. We hit a new rental high or whatever every single month, it seems.
Absolutely. New records every month. And it's not like they're building new places anyway. They keep saying we just got to build new places. All they're doing is arranging startups. Like there are no shovels in the ground. There's no hammers to boards. In fact, last summer the construction industry across Canada fired 70,000 construction workers in the housing industry. They got rid of them because there wasn't enough work being done. And this is indicative of a lot of the problems with the market. I mean, when you have a market and in that market you have prices that are the highest they've ever been. Everybody knows it's speculated high, and we're all just waiting for the crash. And we have a bunch of people just waiting there going, I'm not going to build. I'm not going to build a house. Have it cost me $70,000 just for this is the average red tape just to get the permits, the permission from the government to build a house. 70 grand is the average. And then you got to buy all the lumber, which is at ridiculously high market rates. Labor is going up. I mean, not enough to actually make do for all this stuff, but labor is expensive because you're talking about skilled labor. These are, these aren't, people, journalists, doing TikTok videos. These are people swinging hammers. They want to get paid. And it's not adding up. It's not adding up, and these investors are looking at it going, why? Why would I build a house? This is stupid. Like, it's dumb. I'm going to get into some other business.
Yeah. Well, there's no return on investment, right? And that's why they're not doing it. And I mean, the thing is, this is exactly like what happened before 2008 in the US. You had new construction that absolutely collapsed, and existing home sales continued on, and everybody thought, okay, this is just new construction, and then that fed into existing home sales. And we're seeing exactly the same thing play out, which is kind of scary, but not surprising when you really think about it, because it's a bubble compared with a bubble for different reasons, but still a bubble.
Well, I mean, it's so similar. Like the similarities are just uncanny. And it's funny because I remember in 2008 how the Canadian market fared pretty well, and everybody was bragging, well, because we have a balanced budget, and our lending standards are a little bit more stringent, and we went down the road. We were just like, get rid of that. Let's make a buck, everybody. Let's do it. It's like the Canadians were handed the formula how to screw up massively, but make a bunch of people rich in the process.
Well, yeah, I just saw the banks are writing like 9% bonuses for executives right now. You've got like 20% of their loan portfolio negatively amortizing at most of these big banks. And they're writing themselves off bonuses for 9%. And nobody says anything about that because you got the people like the government who focus on like the grocery stores, for instance. And they're like, oh, look at these nasty grocery stores. But it's really like, look at the banks. They are robbing you blind. Nobody's noticing that. Nobody's pointing that out.
But they're doing it legally. They're doing it in a way where they're laughing because they're like, okay, this is gonna dry up fast. Let's get in there and take it. Like let's just have it. I mean, what is even the thought process behind people like Jagmeet Singh when they go after the? I mean, it's the classic, socialist. Let's blame the rich capitalist trope, right?
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
But I mean, so his argument is that Canada's grocery giants, the grocery store, big time grocery stores. There's not a lot of small grocers anymore anyway. All the small ones have been largely weeded out. But so his argument is that because they've made more profit every year, that they're somehow being nefarious in some sort of way, while also ignoring the fact that inflation's gone up massively. So profit margins, just numerically, like in a nominal way, you would expect them to go up. And then also there's 500,000 more mouths to feed every year in this country. You'd think they would sell some more food.
Yeah, that's true. It's a necessity. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And when I see people like Jagmeet Singh, I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, I saw he came out after they posted that full economic statement, which was more deficits. And he said, this is barely a budget. Where's the massive budget that you promised? Like, he wants more spending. So it's obvious that this guy actually, you know what? To his credit, I think that he does understand the economics of it, and he just pretends like he doesn't understand the economics of it.
He's
because
just a crook.
You don't have to. Yeah, he's just a crook. I mean, he's from the World Economic Forum. We know that he's young global leader of the world. So he's been through their indoctrination program. And God, this is who we've got at the top in Canada. It's just like, I mean, the regulators are run by banksters themselves. So, I mean, that says it all of what you're going to have when you have banksters running the regulatory bodies like the OSFI.
Well, there's that old economics adage. What is it? When you regulate a market, the first thing to be bought and sold in that market's the regulator.
I haven't heard that one actually, but that's a good one.
Absolutely, it's the bureaucrats. They're for sale, first and foremost, every time. So that the politicians will pass the law, but then as soon as it goes, I mean, we're looking at this right now with the Bill C-18. So Bill C-18 it becomes a law, and then they're like, okay, what does this mean? I don't know. The regulators will take care of that. What? I thought you had a plan in mind here. No, we just kind of want to screw with the news industry. That's all. We don't know where it's going to go from here. It's unbelievable.
Exactly. Yeah. And now I saw that Google now is going to pay all these legacy media companies like close to $100 million or something, or over $100 million, I think it was, because of that.
I heard it was exactly $100 million. That's the from Bloomberg.
Jeez, wow.
Bloomberg so, but this is the thing. Rodriguez, Kenny Squanders, I call him. He was counting his chickens months ago before they hatch. He used to be the heritage minister. It's now Pascal Stange. And but he was saying that they were counting on $300 million just in the first year, and now Google comes in and says, "Listen, here's $100 million off. Like, get out of here. Go away." Essentially, that's what happened. They said, "Here's $100 million. Go away, and don't regulate us." And essentially that's what they did. Now they're going to try to dole this out between the CBC and CTV and all that. And, there's going to be a lot of bureaucrats with lined pockets over this whole thing. But that's exactly how these regulations go. And then, I mean, these unintended consequences, I love the term you use, moral hazard, because I just absolutely love that term. Because this is where it comes in. They wanted to make more news available for Canadians, so they say. And there's two ways to comply to this regulation: pay up like pay the your racket fees, or ban news from your website. And that's what Meta decided. They're like, okay, we're just gonna go with the free option and just not have any news on our website.
I know. It's just absolutely crazy when you really think about that. And then simultaneously, they're trying to, well, they have brought through Bill C-11, and you've got that happening, which is going to be more regulating like the streaming services, things like platforms that we're on right now. So, I mean, that and then the Bill C-18 as well together, it just doesn't seem like a good thing to me. It seems like they're trying to push more that legacy media back down people's throats, even though that's not what people want. And this is, again, technology. So technology is advanced. People get their information from multiple sources right now. And that's a good thing, in my opinion. And they're trying to narrow it down to just their sources because they want people to think in particular ways.
Yeah.
Sad.
I find it funny though that and this is what gives me hope, is they're too stupid to write regulation that will actually do what they want it to do. Because
that is so true. Oh, that is so true.
So like the unintended consequences of this is news is banned. Trudeau spent however many hundreds of millions into the billions of dollars to try to indoctrinate the public and put out fake news to everybody, and basically like just tell everybody a bunch of BS with propaganda. He wasn't able to propagandize people because he wrote a piece of legislation that got his news organizations banned from people's feeds. I think that's fantastic. They went ahead and with Bill C-11, part of the regulation now is that podcasts are going to be regulated and they're going to have to register.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look into it, it's only podcasts that make more than I think $10 million in a fiscal year. Now, personally, I think that the reason why they put 10 million on that number was, first, they could go after the big podcasters like Joe Rogan. But now that it's a number, numbers are arbitrary. So that line is written, and all they have to do is come in and amend that and change that number anytime that they want, and then they don't have to re-amend the entire piece of legislation, and then they can just come in and say anything more than $10 a year, and then now everybody can be regulated, and that's kind of their play, in my opinion, anyway. But let's get to some of these super chats here. So. Robert McFallon for $5 says, how do you feel living in David Eby's dystopian market hellscape? Well, yeah, it's scary. It definitely is scary. It's getting back to that the unexplained wealth hoarders. I mean, they're gonna come here. I don't know. I'm terrified of that. Eat Me for $5 says, please provide the kids Tylenol shortage. Oh, please prove the kids Tylenol shortage was a language labeling issue, since the U.S. also faced the same shortage. Well, what I read was the fact that the U.S. had plenty of it. They couldn't ship over the border at the time when there was a Tylenol shortage, and the reason stated was because and I had several articles. I don't have them at my disposal right now, but when I reported on it, I had several articles saying that the reason, and these were at the time, the reason we can't get these shipments that are right there in the United States is because they don't have French labeling on them. And that's a lot of fun for us Canadians over here when we need something. Northern Perspective, great friends of the channel, for $5 says, hey, Clyde, the grocery stores all made all their profit off of drugs and beauty products, aka the shortages of everything. Grocery margins haven't changed. Okay, they haven't changed. They're making money by getting into new markets. Good for them. Good for them. I hope they make great money. I hope they make great profits. I hope any business that operates in Canada does well, despite all of the efforts from the Canadian government to make sure they don't. Dan Ragogna for $10 says, speaking of housing, all I hear is that we need more people in the skilled trades, and then they want experience. How can the government help young Canadians or Canadians get experience? Now, I'm in the trades, and a apply. Like show up to the best way to get experience is to show up to a job site with hard like boots, steel toe boots. If you're trying to get into carpentry, have a tool belt with a hammer, some of the usual things that you're going to need, and just show up. If that site doesn't hire you, go to the next site, go to the next site, go to the next site. We don't have applicants at my auto garage where I work. I turn wrenches for a living, and we just don't have applicants. Everybody's hurting for mechanics. My shop happens to be doing very well because we have a great atmosphere and everybody wants to work at our shop in town. And all the other shops are like, how you guys do it? It's we treat people good. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get employees. If you have a good work ethic, you are gonna have no problem getting a job. People will teach you. That's really what it comes down to. There is no shortage of that. What say you, Luke?
Yeah, I would say exactly the same thing. Apprenticeships are like the best thing for getting into skilled trades and everything like that. You've got to get the hands-on experience. Going to college and university and all these different things is not good. Apprenticeships are the best way. That's how I became a mechanical engineer, was through an apprenticeship program. And yeah, I thought that was great.
It's definitely the way to go. I find that like I hear so much about people getting these useless degrees and then they go to work.
Oh yeah.
They go to work and in those fields, that's where they're saying you need to have experience. We won't hire you if you don't have any experience. And it's like, exactly. Well, okay. Then what? So people go into these unpaid internships and they owe all this money in student loans. They can't afford to pay their rent. If you can even find a place, and then the price of food is going through the roof. How are you going to get a job? Your best bet is get into the trades, honestly. And like I said, you don't have to have a ton of experience to get in the door. Walk into a shop. Don't go to job fairs if you want to get into the trades. Nobody cares about job fairs. We don't do job fairs. We don't. I don't even think we even put out ads. We just wait until somebody walks in. And when somebody walks in, we'll hire them. Like, that's it. It really is that easy. Don't be shy. Go shake hands. For all the kids out there that are, like, nervous about it, suck it up, buttercup. Go get over your shyness. Walk into shops and just say, I want to work. Work for a week for free if you have to. I would do stuff like that when I was younger. Yeah, I would go and I'd say I'll do it for a week for free. And if you like what I'm doing, I'll stick around. And if you don't like it, send me home. Whatever, it's better than nothing at the end of the day. It really is. But yeah, I can't say enough about the trades. College is such a big waste of time, effort, and we're scamming immigrants with it right now. The prices are bid up because they think they call it a lucrative business now, putting people through the higher education system to get them into essentially no work situations. All of the, what is it, like coding and all of that stuff, that's all being farmed off to other countries, if not being taken up from AI. What's your opinion on this AI and it taking over people's jobs?
Yeah, I mean, well, let's look at like, when people say AI, I kind of always think of like, I don't know why, self-checkouts. And I think what a great job self-checkouts do. I'm joking, obviously, like self-checkouts are the worst thing ever. So, and I kind of just think, are we going to replace everything? I mean, all AI has to be programmed by humans initially. I think AI is just another bubble, essentially. Might even be the next big bubble. If there's going to be a next big bubble, hopefully there's really not. But yeah, AI is just another bubble, in my opinion, just another buzzword. But yeah, I mean, because the thing is, like, the company I work for, we've been using AI stuff for years and years now, and it's for like support tools and different things. And I mean, to see it just all of a sudden come to the front in 2023 just seems bizarre when it's been around for such, like, why now? But anyways, it's the buzzword of the time, I think.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the World Economic Forum types. So like,
yeah.
right now I mean, every generation I feel has to have their like Karl Marx idiot that comes in with this like meme of an idea that's like so simplistic and people can get on board with it. But at the end of the day, you implement it and it's absolute nightmare. Like it's starvation across the board. Klaus Schwab is that idiot, right? He's this guy, he's self-important, he reckons himself like a godlike intellect, right? And he's come up with basically Marxism plus robots. This idea of the resource-based economy, or whatever it is. What does he call it? Stakeholder capitalism, where
that's it.
AI is going to take over all the things. Yeah, the fourth industrial revolution. So AI is going to take over everything, and they're hashing up old arguments that were bunk in the first place. During the agrarian revolution, when agriculture industrialized, we had 80% of the population working in the farms, toiling in the fields. And overnight, it was like 2% of the population, or 4% of the population. And they're like, what are we going to do with all the useless eaters and all these useless people? And it turns out those people weren't useless. They were just freed up to do all kinds of other things with their time. And they invented entirely new economies. And it was great. And it benefited all of us. But here we are again with this naysayer, Klaus Schwab, and his ilk that say, we're going to have another class of people that are going to be completely useless. What are we going to do with them? We need to call them, or whatever he's advocating for. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, and I like to hear yours, what I think people are going to do is just find another avenue. And you're going to invent brand new economies. I mean, whoever thought that talking to each other on the internet was going to be an economy in like 10 years ago?
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Right? But there's definitely a market for this. We're fulfilling this in this market, and here we are doing it. So what are all the useless eaters going to do in the future, Luke?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at all the people who were replaced by self-checkouts, you've now got people just watching those self-checkouts because they need to be monitored because they're so great. They're just so fantastic. So I don't know, maybe we'll just need lots of people to actually monitor the AI to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. I mean, I haven't seen that new movie. I don't know if you have, about that AI, but I thought that would be interesting to watch when it comes out to stream. But maybe it's going to be like the iRobot movie where the robots just all come to kill us. They find out what human life is like, and then they're like, hold on, this doesn't compute. Let's kill everybody. But I think like the Klaus Schwab types that are their whole idea is literally like to cull people. It's literally like the Club of Rome cult and the Marxist cult. But the thing is, like, Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and all these types, they do it in a certain way where it's like, you know what, we're just going to transition to this green energy, this new green revolution. It's not going to be a green revolution. It's going to be less energy, which means the population of the earth would go down. And it also means economies would go down, is basically what they're proposing, because they're proposing less energy consumption. And when there's less energy consumption, the population goes down.
I think we'd all be better off if there was less of them.
Yeah. Well, them first. That's what I say. You go first. Why? Oh, it's just absolutely crazy that these guys are out there and they talk. I mean, Bill Gates has literally talked about it as well before, that the population needs to go down. And this guy's bringing out all these different drugs and different things. I wouldn't take anything that he said he was giving out. I mean, even packages delivered by drones now in places in Africa. Crazy.
And there's a lot of actually like smart people that got wrapped up in all of this. I worked with a guy who I asked him, are you ever going to have kids one day? He says, no, I'm not going to do that. We have too many people on the planet and there's too many dumb people and they're doing dumb things and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, if you reckon yourself smart enough to realize this, don't you think it would be beneficial to keep you in the gene pool? And he's like, well, I never thought about it that way. I never, huh?
That's very, you turn the tables on him.
Yeah, right. I don't get the mentality. Have kids, be fruitful, prosper, get out there and do your thing. I'm gonna hit a couple more super chats and see what people are saying here. Dan Ragogna again with another $10 super chat says, speaking of housing, all I hear is that we need more people in the skilled trades, and hold on, I already read that one. We need to hit the refresh. I need to hit the refresh. What am I doing here? Reading these again and again. They're not popping up. Oh, I'm just gonna have to read through this. Summer says for $13.99, my nephew is studying to be a mechanic in the Philippines. Nissan have apprenticeships like an apprenticeship-like program where they hire the best mechanics and speak Japanese. He was working on a Japanese car today. Wow, that's actually really interesting. That's cool. In the Philippines, speaking Japanese. Eat Me with the $5 super chat. Clyde, even the Daily Mail reported the shortages in the U.S. Sending a link in the chat. Please read it. It hit Canada first, then the U.S. Okay, well, we'll have to duke that one out later when we get more information on that story. And if I was wrong about a story, yeah, I would like to be corrected on that. That's absolutely for sure. But Luke, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I know you're on vacation right now, are you not?
Well, I'm working. So I'm down here in Mexico. Tomorrow I'm heading out to Guadalajara, but I've been working between the beach and working.
That sounds like it sounds grueling. I'm sure it is.
Got to get away from that miserable Calgary winter, although I heard it hasn't been so bad recently.
Well, I don't blame you whatsoever. I'm in British Columbia, the nicest place in the winter time to be in Canada, and I'm still jealous of you down in Mexico. So Luke, I want to thank you so much. Stick around. I'm just going to end the stream here. And I want to thank everybody for joining in the stream tonight. Big thanks. I hope everybody was entertained. I had my little freak out earlier about the French in Canada, and we all had fun with that. But big thanks. I'll probably see everybody over in the Discord later. If you're not a member of the Discord, the link is in the description down below. We'll have Luke on again for future episodes for sure. So everybody, big warm welcome to Luke, first time on the channel, and we'll see you guys all in the next one. We'll see you on Monday morning. Hopefully you all will be there after this brutally cold weekend that we're all going to suffer without you, Luke. Thanks again for joining.